Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with my sister Connie Blackwood, and we are continuing the conversation from last time about relationships and creating meaningful connections within these relationships. And today we want to specifically talk about triggers and how they impact our communication, how they impact our interactions with one another, and how recognizing what our triggers are and acknowledging them earlier on can actually help us navigate through relationships in a more positive way. So, Connie, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks for having me. So we kind of ended last podcast with talking a little bit about triggers. And so I feel like it's a good lead into this one, especially if you're binge listening. So this will be like a carry on. For me, it's been a journey I've been on for the last year where I've been really watching what triggers me and why it triggers me, and to try to eliminate triggers in my life if I can, because every emotion that we have that's negative is caused by a trigger in our lives. That's what I've noticed for me. And so by eliminating certain triggers in my life, by healing those things or by dealing with those things or whatever it is, then I've had less and less situations that have just been poof, here you are in this emotional response. And so I found that it's actually helping me to grow myself. And so I'm kind of in the middle of this journey of figuring out what my triggers are and dealing with them. And so it's kind of neat that we're talking about this today because I've actually been doing this for almost a year now. And as I've been doing it, I've noticed some of them are triggers between me and my spouse. Some of them are triggers between like when somebody says something or does something, or all of a sudden I get this instant response. And so where does that come from? What is the root? How can I deal with this and get it out? And so I feel like a lot of times when I'm triggered, it has an emotional response attached. So what's that emotional response? Am I offended? Am I angry? Am I fearful? What is it? First of all, how am I feeling? Then what caused me to feel that way? And is there a link to this that's deeper? And so those are the three questions I ask myself. Laura, what do you do about triggers?
Well, triggers, I have a few major triggers in my life, and I realize that they stem from like my childhood. And I'll use one example. Growing up in the home that we did, our dad was very angry, very rageful, would have outbursts all the times. And I internalized that as to I was the problem. And so when people raise their voices to me, that their voices get elevated or agitated, then I immediately get triggered thinking that somehow I'm the problem. Right. And so recognizing that helps me separate myself from what's happening in that moment and realizing that just because someone is getting angry or frustrated or raising their voice or getting elevated doesn't mean that I caused that reaction in them, right? And almost separating myself from that person, that situation, and realizing that that's my trigger, right? So when I start feeling responsible, I start feeling like somehow I've caused issues or that, I'm the reason why they're getting elevated. I've had to talk myself off of that ledge, right? Say, Laura, this has nothing to do with them. This is they're being triggered and I'm being triggered at the same time. Like when you get two people being triggered by a a, a moment, but we're being triggered by for different reasons, for different ways, and we're responding to each other. What helps me is recognizing that for me is a huge thing and acknowledging it in that moment and being like, Laura, don't take this seriously, right?
Hmm.
Like, don't take this to heart and ask more questions,
Hmm.
right? Be willing to, investigate, be willing to understand. Like, okay, why? And this is one question that I'll say is like, why, why are you, raising your voice right now? Or why are you getting elevated? Like asking more questions, trying to understand instead of just immediately assuming and thinking that I've done something wrong and that I'm the cause of this problem, right? And so that's one of my major triggers. But I find that when I recognize what my triggers are, they're usually stemmed from something, like you said, way deeper, a
Hmm.
moment in my past that, I had an experience which then communicated something to me, and I've now appropriating that same interpretation into the rest of my life, right? And it causes so much miscommunication, misunderstanding, you know. So part of you understanding yourself is understanding your triggers. Like,
Hmm.
why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And another one of my triggers is I get very emotional, very, very, very emotional during my time in the month, right?
Hmm.
And so I actually have had to tell myself, Laura, for this week, like if it's that time of my monthly cycle during this week, don't take yourself seriously at all, right? Don't take your emotions seriously. If you're feeling like depressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling upset, like don't take any of it seriously at all because right now that's just your hormones going wacko, right? And that's actually helped me, right? Because it's like some days where I don't pay attention, it's like, why am I feeling so depressed right now?
Hmm.
Right? Why do I feel so down? And then it was like when I realized, I'm like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. It has to do
Hmm.
with my hormonal cycle. I'm kind of like, okay, I can get through this. I know that this will be over in a few days, right? So
Hmm.
understanding our triggers. Maybe your trigger isn't even emotional. Maybe your trigger is a place, right? A place where something happened that triggers a memory, and then you feel a certain way in that place. But that same situation isn't happening right now, but you're being triggered from that place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You can even be triggered by music. You can be triggered by sounds. You can be triggered by smells.
Yeah.
Our memories hold those things, especially if it was traumatic. Our memories hold them tight. And they're a subconscious reaction to those things, right? And so knowing where they come from and if they're able to be dealt with, dealing with them is very powerful.
So do you think that every response should be um, acted upon? Right. For example, if I'm being triggered and I'm feeling angry about something, our natural response would be to actually act out on that anger. But
I
if
think
we're
the
learning about, but if we're
Go ahead.
learning about if we're learning about our triggers, how do we manage that situation, right? Like for me personally, it helps me to pull back on that anger and say, okay, Laura, why are you actually feeling this way? And reevaluate and not just lash out immediately in, almost like a default uh, reaction, right?
Well, like I said, I ask myself those three questions whenever I
Hmm.
experience a negative emotion because I know there's something behind it, right? You don't just get angry to be angry. You don't just get offended because you're offended. Something happened, right? Whether it was, like I said, an experience or one of your senses was triggered, something caused that reaction in you. And so whatever that negative emotion is that has been triggered, there's something that caused it. So realizing what it is, asking yourself the questions gives you that ability to figure out, okay, where is this coming from? Because knowing that can help you actually resolve that. For me, one of my triggers was something that my husband said to me in a certain way. And it was the words that he used. So then I was like, okay, why? And it was because my dad said those same words to me, and he only said it to me when he was really mad at me. And I
Mhm.
was like, and so I felt like he, every time he said that to me, he was really mad. And sometimes he was completely calm when he said it. But I
Okay.
immediately was like, you are so angry at me and I have failed you, right? Like that was
Mhm.
my thing. So I'm like, can you just word this differently for me? Because I don't know if I can actually stop those words from triggering that. Can you just say it differently? And ever since then, he's said it differently and it hasn't done the same thing. It means the same thing, but because it's different words, it's changed everything for me. And now I know what he means, and I know he's not mad. And so, even knowing what words are being used that are triggering us is huge because it changes everything. And some
Mhm.
words that have been spoken over and over and over in that exact way do make an imprint on us. And we need
Mhm.
to recognize those things.
Yeah, and I think too, in situations like in our relationships, when we recognize what our triggers are, being able to say, okay, what I'm going through right now has nothing to do with you,
Mm-hmm.
right? I realize, I recognize, I acknowledge that what I'm feeling right now has nothing to do with you. I'm being triggered by this other thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it can completely diffuse relationships, diffuse conflict, diffuse situations that could potentially become something that they shouldn't, right? And I find that if I am being triggered and I am having a difficult moment and I am being impacted negatively, when I come to my husband, let's say, and I just say to him, you know what? I am feeling, all of these emotions right now, but it has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
Then that puts him on ease. He no longer feels like, he's done something wrong or that he has to be on alert or he has to be, walking on eggshells. So that is also helpful in relationships. If you recognize what your triggers are, that you are able to then communicate that to the other person and just say, you know what, it isn't you, it's me, right? What I'm experiencing right now has nothing to do with you. It's something that I need to deal with on a personal level. Um, Something was said, something was done, maybe something in the environment, but I recognize that I'm being triggered and I need to deal with this. This is my issue, not yours, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. And like, I remember one time when me and Walter were having a fight, and I, I was like, okay, this is not, there's something going on. This is not even what we're talking about because it was it was a ridiculous fight. Like it was about something really stupid. And I'm like, this is not what this is about. To be at this level, this is not what this is about. And so
Mhm.
I went and I grabbed a tea towel, which is our thing. Like if we know we need to hear each other. And I brought it back and I threw it at him. And in that moment, he was just like, she wants to understand me. Okay. And he was then able to figure out exactly what was behind it. And it had nothing to do with what we were talking about. It had everything to do with a different situation that was going on and how he was
Mhm.
feeling. And so we were able to completely diffuse that and completely help him through that situation. But had we not done that, he would have kept thinking it was about this ridiculous thing that had nothing to do with what was going on. And so
Right.
sometimes you need to just use the tools you have. And so for us, it was the tea towel, right? If you have a different tool, use your tools because they're very effective in being able to figure out what's actually going on, what is actually triggering this response, because that wasn't a normal response for something like that small.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's hard to do that sometimes in the moment, right? Especially if you don't have some of those tools or strategies. So another recommendation I have is if you feel like things are going crazy, the communication is not going well, you're not even on the same page, you're both coming from different reactions, you're both being triggered. That's actually a good moment to say, you know what? We're not going to talk about this right now. We're both going to take a breather, take some space and think about this and try to figure out what exactly is it that is going on
Mhm.
And then when I have more clarity, when I have more understanding about what it is I'm feeling, where it's coming from, why I'm feeling that way, then we can come back and rationally talk about it, right? Because if you're in that heightened state, it often morphs into something completely ridiculous, something completely not even on the same topic. And, in doing so, you can say things that you don't mean. You can really cause a lot of hurt and harm. And if we just take those moments where we take time alone and just really evaluate exactly what is it that's going on, and then be able to come back and clearly communicate, it changes everything. And it brings so much understanding and clarity. And I feel like it actually deepens relationship, right?
Mhm.
You're not separating for the purpose of creating division. You're separating for the purpose of creating understanding and recognizing what you're being triggered by so that your relationship can grow.
For sure. We've had moments where we've gone away and prayed about it and come back. Because there's so much clarity that comes when you're talking to God, because it's like, am I
Mhm.
actually being ridiculous? And a lot of times you're going to hear the answer. It may not be the one you want to hear. But we always come back completely different after those times where we separated and just taken some time. And it's been really good. So we've had positive responses to that too. So,
Most recent time when I did that, and I was praying because I was like because with my husband, when he gets frustrated or angry or raises a voice, it triggers me in my childhood. And so I was praying about it. I was like, God, why does this trigger me so much? And then he said to me, Laura, it's okay for your husband to feel anger. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's okay for him to be able to express frustration about stuff. I don't have to always take it personally, right? Because there's things that we should be angry about. There's things
mhm.
that should frustrate us, right? And it's a healthy emotion as long as we don't, unleash it on someone else in an inappropriate manner, right? But to feel anger, feel frustration, to feel hurt, like these emotions, they're natural emotions. We should have the ability to experience them and feel them
Oh, yeah.
without having to put someone else in harm's way, right? But I wasn't allowing my husband to have that expression because it was triggering me. And it was like God actually spoke to me and said, no, Laura, it's okay for him to be able to express frustration or anger. And I was like, you're right. It's one of those moments where you're like, yeah, I gotta shift there, right?
Hmm. For sure. And not all the things that trigger emotional response, like negative emotional responses, are things we need to get rid of. Like you were saying, there are some things we should be angry about. There are some things that we should be responding to. Um, it's it's those things that are triggering us that we can do something about, that we should, that are not helping us, that are actually like hurting our relationships and hurting other people. Those are the things we need to deal with.
That's
So
right.
thank you for pointing that out.
This is a massive topic, and there's so many different ways we can be triggered, but recognizing the fact that not every problem in relationship is what it seems to be on the surface, and taking the time to, really ask yourself some of those deeper questions and get to the bottom of things so that you can actually cultivate stronger connections with your friends, your loved ones, your significant others, so that you can have quality relationships. And that's the focus of this month. How do we cultivate stronger relationships, healthier connections, and do it in a way that will be life-giving to one another? And one of those ways is figuring out what we personally are triggered by and then coming up with solutions and strategies to deal with that. So, once again, thank you for joining us. Connie and I do want to mention we have a webinar coming up in February, the first week of February, and sorry, the first Thursday of February. And so, if you are available that day, we'd love for you to join us. And you can check out more information on our website at nosafoundation.com, and you can reserve your spot there as well. Thanks and have a great day. We'll see you next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.